genel izleyici kitlesi için uygundur.
Saat Farkı'ndan merhabalar. Ben Feyza Gümüşlüoğlu. Her hafta farklı ülkelerden konuklarla farklı perspektiflere yer vermeye çalışıyoruz. Dünyayı Ekotürk ekranında buluşturuyoruz bu programda. Şimdi bu hafta stüdyoda çok ilginç hakikaten bir konuğum var. Kendisinin Türkiye'de olması, özellikle de bugünlerde Türkiye'de olması oldukça güzel bir tesadüf diyelim. NASA içinde çalışan aynı zamanda bir mühendis bizlerle. Aslında enteresan bir hikayesi var. Kendisinden de birazdan dinleyeceğiz ama İsrail'in ablukası ve 7 Ekim'den sonra özellikle yoğunlaşan bombardımanları altındaki Gazze şeridinden NASA'ya uzanan bir yolculuğu konuşacağız bu hafta Filistinli bir mühendisle. Çok kısa bir hatırlatma yapalım girişte. NASA'nın 2021 yılında Mars'a gönderdiği bir keşif aracı vardı, hatırlayacaksınız. Perseverance isimli bir keşif aracıydı bu. Ve bir mini helikopterle birlikte, Ingenuity idi bu helikopterin ismi de, 18 Şubat'ta Mars'a inmişti ve bu mini helikopter başka bir gezegende uçurulan ilk hava aracı olarak da Nisan ayında 2021'den söz ediyorum, tarihe geçmişti ve Kızıl Gezegen'den oldukça çarpıcı fotoğraflar, ses kayıtları yayınlamıştı. O dönem hatırlayacaksınızdır eminim ki. Hatta ben telefonumun ses kaydı ve daha doğrusu çalma müziği yapmıştım onu, o ses kaydını bir dönem. Şimdi bugün stüdyoda olan konuğumuz işte o helikopterin arkasındaki tasarım ekibinden, o mini helikopteri tasarlayan ekibin baş mühendisi Filistinli Loay Elbasyouni. Aynı zamanda hali hazırda da Blue Moon misyonu roket projesi üzerinde çalışıyor. Bir yandan da kendisi Gazze'li olduğundan dolayı ailesi de aslında Gazze'de. 7 Ekim sonrası özellikle orada mahsur kalmış durumdalar. Bir yandan ailesini de oradan tahliye etmek için uğraşıyor. Dolayısıyla Gazze'den NASA'ya uzanan bu çok enteresan hikayesini bu hafta konuşacağız. Kendisi dediğimiz gibi Türkiye'de, İstanbul'da. Merhaba Loay, hoş geldin yayınımıza. Welcome. Hello ve sahlen. Welcome to Istanbul.
How are you?
Thank you. No Turkish?
Yeah, a bit. Yavaş yavaş.
Hoş geldin. Thank you very much for being here. It's such a coincidence that, especially these days, you are here because, as you also know, recently also Turkey has sent its first astronaut to the space, Mr. Alper Gezer, and also a lot of things happening related to space. Space race has been going on, and it's very, heating up, especially recently in recent years. But before going to the specific Mars helicopter, which landed on the Red Planet back in February 2001, first of all, for our audience, let's get to know more about you. What brought you to Istanbul this time? Why are you here in Turkey? And from Gaza to NASA, can you tell a little bit more about yourself before I jump to the helicopter and other projects you are working on?
Yeah, so I just, because I came here because close to my parents. My parents stuck in Gaza. They was visiting Gaza, and they've been stuck there since the beginning of the war. And I've been trying to do everything I can to help them, bring them out. And I thought, I wanted to, I'm working remote, so I could work remote from here. And my brother lived here in Istanbul, so I picked Istanbul to come work so I can be in the same time zone. And in case my parents were able to evacuate them, I honestly thought we could get them out in a week or so, but it's been extremely difficult. So
they visited before. I mean, they were there since June.
Yeah, they went there in June, and they were actually planning to leave in November. Actually, I was supposed to go to Gaza October 15th, but plans changed.
Plans changed, yeah. And Loay, how does it feel? Especially, because you should feel really, really helpless. Especially, you're an electrical engineer. And when there is no electricity in Gaza, when there is no food, no fuel, how does that make you feel? It must be really tough.
Before the war, I always thought, because every time they used to bomb the power station, but people in Gaza everybody started putting solar roof, but this, solar cells on their houses, but this war, they actually bombed all of them. That's just only a worry for the first 2 days. We think electricity is a need, but it's just a want. You know, I mean, I don't think anybody to complain about the electricity, you know, in Gaza, you know, because they complain, they're, you know, trying to get food and water.
Yeah, yeah. Your childhood, you remember, well, I mean, you were raised in Gaza, right?
Yes.
So until what time you stayed in Gaza? Can you tell us more about yourself, your childhood? How was it being a child in Gaza, growing up as a kid in Gaza?
Yeah, so my father moved to Gaza, you know, in '84, and you know, so I was really young, you know, and at the time, and you know, so I came from Germany. I did, you know, and we could not like leave Gaza. We got stuck there, and you know, so to me, you know, I came in there as like European kid, you know, so my perspective is completely different, and you know, I was extremely like shocked, you know, of like, you know, the treatment of the military, you know, the Israeli military occupation forces toward Palestinian, you know, and to me is like, you know, I always thought the army is supposed to protect us, but I didn't understand at the time, you know, what's the meaning of occupation. And you know, when I was like 6 years old, you know, I had my first experience, you know, going to UNRWA school, you know, and yeah, I know that everybody was running away into a house to hide because the soldiers, you know, coming through, and you know, I was like wondering, I thought there was a lion running from the zoo. You know, and I was like, why people running? And I kept looking through the door crack. I still remember, you know, the color of the door, and you know, and I was like, why people running away from the military? So, but growing after that, you know, I mean, you know, it's like I think a kid grew up really fast in Gaza. You know, I started thinking about how can we do things, you know, and it's you know, I mean, I've always been an engineer, I've always been an entrepreneur since young age. So I was like, I always like wanted to do a different in the world, you know, and I used to fix a lot of things. I mean, I remember even, you know, used to have like walkie-talkie, like the kids' walkie-talkie, and
yeah.
I was like, I wonder what happened if I changed stuff in it. So I kept changing stuff in it until I was able to get into the Israeli communication channel. I was good hear, you know, in Hebrew, they talking.
So you were not directly specifically interested in space, but more like anything which is moving, basically, I guess.
No, so I mean, I like when I was in Germany, so I loved cars, you know. I love fast cars, you know, so because we grew up with the Autobahn, so it was like every time it's like go faster. So my father used to always buy us these fast race cars, and I had a collection of all different kind of sport cars, Ferrari, Lamborghinis, but I had the space shuttle, you know, and I always wanted to be the pilot. I thought you could fly the space shuttle, and I didn't know that was an astronaut job, you know. So, but you know, so I mean, that was really kind of one of my hope. But I kind of, you know, as a child, you know, like I was very realist, you know, and I actually gave up my dreams. I was like, you know, there was no way a kid from Gaza,
right? We are talking about that.
No way a kid from Gaza, you know, could become a pilot, because we don't have airlines, we don't have Air Force.
Loay, that's why I'm asking you, because especially, I mean, of course, it didn't start with October 7, but especially, unfortunately, after October 7, it became more clear that kids there, we are seeing a lot of unfortunate videos, footages coming from there, and especially life of kids there. And it's really hard to imagine kids in Gaza growing up with dreams, with so that's why I really wonder, when do you remember yourself first saying to your mom or to your friend, to your relatives, that I want to become an astronaut, I have this dream, I want to do this in the future? So how is your memory on that? Like, when you remember yourself as a kid, when was the first time that you really said to someone that you want to become an astronaut or an, I don't know, space engineer, whatever?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like, you know, everybody always called me the young engineer. So, you know, my uncle's like, you should be an agricultural engineer. Oh, you should be an electrical engineer. My other uncle, because I fixed his radio, or like I fixed the TV. You should be like, you know, communication engineer. And when I used to start, actually, I invented antennas. I used to, you know, it's really funny, you know, I made, by the kitchen pan, you know, I started figuring ways, because main antenna wouldn't work, and I was like, invented antennas, and I started like finding TV channel. And actually, believe it or not, I actually caught the Turkish channels, you know.
Okay.
You know, so I was like, send my cousin up, you know, and like, you know, so I mean, always was like, I'm very innovative, you know, since a very young age, you know, like, you know, I like to work with anything. I was like, I just believed I could do it, you know, and, you know, even like, people was like, you should be mechanical engineer, because one time I fixed our water pump, you know, I took the engine all apart, you know, and people, I was like, no, I think I want to be electronic engineer. But because I thought I want to one day come back maybe to Gaza, and I wanted to help, Gaza, and I wanted to make something that is advanced, and
By the way, when just for our audience, I mean, I know your story. I read a lot of details about your story. But when did you leave Gaza, and how did you move to the U.S. to study electrical engineering?
Yeah, so I mean, I finished my high school. I studied English in Gaza, and my father, because he thought I'm an entrepreneur, he's like, I think you don't like studying, so maybe if you don't succeed in school, I know you will be a successful businessman. But I kind of wanted to like prove him wrong, so I made sure I struggled a lot actually, so to actually get the visas, and then when I got to the U.S., it was extremely expensive, so I dropped out of school. So I mean, I was out of school for 1 year just to work, to pay for school. I mean, I had 2 times to quit school and then go back to a different university, and at the end, but, so it was a really long story, I had to study quite a bit, I mean, I had to do a catch-up because I wanted, I was talking to a friend, I was like, I used to take like 19, 20 hours a semester of classes, I finished my bachelor almost in 2.5 years, and then I finished, got my master like almost like a few months later, and because I didn't have money, and so it was extremely difficult, and if I didn't really, I just wanted to honor my father's word. I was like, I would finish, and I always wanted to start a company in technology, because I mean that was always my inspiration since I was young, and I even, started this clock business, when I was in Gaza, and
Wow.
So.
So you were developing clocks, or you were designing
Yeah, I
clocks
mean, I
and
actually
then
used to build,
selling them?
Yeah, and I
building
usually
clocks and
even
selling?
made an assembly line in our balcony, and my mom hated me because there was paint everywhere. And I was like, don't worry, I'll repaint it for you.
Wow.
I made these molds, and I was making a lot of clocks, and I used my uncle's shop to actually have a showroom in Gaza. But I don't think they appreciated art. So,
So Loay, after studying electrical engineering in the United States, then how is your story? I mean, how did you end up in space industry, basically? Because as we see, I think we will now see the helicopter, as I mentioned earlier, back in 2021. So you are behind the team, I mean, behind this helicopter Ingenuity, right?
Yes.
So how did you end up in space industry, basically?
Yeah, so I mean, I really loved space, and actually, this is kind of really interesting because, like, in college, actually, I become very socially active, like politically active, and I worked on a lot of issues like trade issues, environmental issues, and I was even big anti-war at the time, the war of Iraq. So that kind of made me like, I really saw a big problem like oil companies on the world, and I actually wanted to work on something create alternative. So because even in politics, sometimes I don't believe politics provide an alternative. Politics try to maybe change a little bit, maybe influence alternative. So I wanted to work really in electric cars and renewable energy, and that's what I really started working on. And from there, after like a lot of the electric car company early on failed, because I was one of the early pioneers in electric cars, I switched into electric airplanes, because we're actually working on hydrogen planes, and solar planes, and we're actually working on a lot of drones,
Yeah.
And but I didn't really want to, actually work on military stuff as much, and from there we actually got the contract to work on the Mars helicopter, so. And I mean, the Mars helicopter is actually a solar plane, and actually work on solar and electricity, and and that's my expertise.
So it was the first ever helicopter landed on Mars,
Yes.
right? O görüntüyü de görebilirsek arkadaşlardan rica edelim. Mars'taki helikopter görüntüsünü. We will see the videos soon. But so it was the first ever helicopter on Mars.
Yes.
How was it? I mean, it was a kind of Mission Impossible at that time, right?
I mean,
what do you remember from those times?
It was Mission Impossible. At least that's what people believed. I mean, a lot of people, a lot of the scientists. I mean, because most people said that there's no air on Mars, but I mean, there is very little air. So there's about 0.6%, which is almost close to like 0.5%. So a lot of people like 0.5% is a margin of error, So there's so a lot of people did not believe we could fly on Mars. So I mean, even the project, like from the economical budget standpoint, was not fully approved from the beginning, So we built a very small model to prove, and then they were asking like, could we we'll have to be this very lightweight, And I was like, yeah, we only could do it if we use a new different of even design, because we could not use space standards, because
Yeah.
helicopter. if you design it based on space standards, it's actually it cost a lot more, and at the same time it became a lot heavier weight. So I was like, we can use automotive parts or Earth-rated parts, which is like actually a lot lower cost. Now actually the entire new space industry use, we want to everybody use automotive parts, because they're a lot cheaper to make.
Did you have any doubts or fear that it's not gonna work?
That's like, I can name so many times. I mean, the first time we did it, I was like, everybody's like, oh, that's not gonna go anywhere. Nobody believe it. It's not gonna fly. But we made this small thing to a lift demonstrator, just lift it up, and we actually proved that it could fly. And then we got the next round of funding. So we worked on the next, stage. We built the first one, and people still, I didn't know if it's gonna go to Mars. So because for a long time we were not even approved to go to Mars. So and then when you landed, it could fail, and then. I was up until 4 a.m. I was like, they're gonna fly it, and we're waiting for the data, and we got the data say 3 meters, and I was like, what's 3 meters? And they're like, oh, that means it took off. Then a few minutes later we saw a photo. Wow. I mean, even until the time it flew, it's like every time the second flight, we were not so sure. I was not so sure because we never got to try it. Designing things on Earth, you can try it. You can go drive in your parking lot the car.
Yeah, exactly. But
so design something never been done on another planet, and we only built a total of 3 helicopters. One for the testing, for the first one, and the second one for just to do all the validation on, and then we designed the one that's on Mars. So most designs and most companies, we want to tell people my first design worked on Mars.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, literally.
But by the way, what was the original idea? What was the original target for sending a helicopter to Mars? What was the...
So the main reason was the helicopter is a technology demonstrator, so prove the technology would work.
Just to prove it.
So you can fly.
What did it do, for instance, at that time?
So the original mission was to do 3 to 5 flights to prove we can fly, and then get the data from going right and left, so we can use it to develop the next helicopter.
I see. So how many times it flew, by the way? You said.
So now it flew 71 times.
71 times?
Yes.
For what? Just for fun, or?
No. So after the first 5 missions, because of the budget constraint, they had to approve it. They extended the mission as a scout, so they actually helped the rover to map things. Because in the past, the reason they want to send a helicopter, the rovers cannot go over hills. If you have, so it limit the time, and actually a helicopter could cover a much wider area, because when you take off, you can see much bigger area. So that that actually make Mars exploration a lot faster. Even though as small as it is, it doesn't have instrument. You can send the photo to Earth or to the rover, and then we can decide the rover go this way, instead of the rover go this way, and then they discover there's a hole it cannot go through, and then it'll have to go back. It takes 6 months late more.
What is it doing, by the way, these days? I mean, is it still there? Are you guys planning to take it back to Earth?
Yeah, we actually been pushing. There's a lot of the later flight, we could flying a lot higher altitude to see how, because the atmosphere on Mars changed really quick. Taking picture that will actually help navigate. It actually went over sand dune where the rover could not go. So we only get pictures from it, but that's which is it helped the rover in some ways.
Oh, such a huge success. So this is probably your first major international success, right? I mean, this is something you should be proud of, I guess.
I worked on the first Ford electric car, but but yeah, I mean, there is a lot of I think it is the most. I mean. Honestly, when I was working on the program, I was like, if this succeeds, I will be in history books, and it's just we read about the Wright brother first flight,
Yeah, exactly, and
it's you cannot take me out of history book. Actually, I got interviewed by the Library of Congress, so I know I'm somewhere in the archive.
Why do we go to Mars? Why do we go to Moon? What is humanity trying to do? Why are we so keen on, especially in the last few years? Because it was back in 1972, it was a race during Cold War time. It was the space race was between United States and Russia mainly. But now today, a lot of countries, in addition to nations, a lot of companies, private companies, are conducting missions in space to the Moon, to the Mars. So maybe we can also talk about here space economy. It's a huge economy, especially after private companies entered the area. But what do you think, what motivates people to really to look up to space, to moon, to Mars? What do you think the main motivation for the humanity to look for alternative lives, economic logic? What is the logic behind this? Do you think this behind this motivation?
You said look up, you know. So if I wonder, like, walk on the beach in the middle of the night, and when you're thinking about what do you want to do in the future, what do?
Looking
You look
up the sky, huh?
You look up the sky. So all our ancient, like if you look at like I mean, read a lot of like Arabic, scholars, or like even Muslim scholars, like Khwarizmi, a lot of them were astronomers. A lot of them, even the Greek ones, they're all like, they're like doctors, mathematicians, astronomers. Because like when you look in space, like it gives you hope, it gives you dreams. I think the word probably way underestimated, like a lot of like even third world countries, they don't see the value of it. I accredit the majority of the United States advancement to the moon mission. And what I mean is like, because it gives people hope to make something much greater than us. I mean, not only it bring us together, when you look to the future, you look far away, it's like it gives you a reason, like, it gives you a target. The target make you, like when you do a research toward a target, you're more successful than, I just want to advance my country, but you don't know how to advance your country. So like, when we went to the United States to the moon with the Apollo mission, there was 500,000 engineers working on that project. Engineers and technicians, But a lot of the kids for the future generation, all of them wanted to become scientists, all of them wanted to work on space, People say, I want to be an astronaut just because it's so cool, you're out. But like most people, like, can I study astronaut? I was like, no, you cannot. You can study engineering, you can study math, you can study physics. I'm an engineer, I could actually have a higher possibility going to space than...
Are you planning, by the way?
Yes.
Are you sign up for the program for astronaut?
I mean, I apply every time,
okay.
But if I cannot go with the government, one day I'll probably make my own rocket go by myself.
Wow, you apply. So that's basically hope for future.
I mean,
that's the main motivation,
also,
you say.
So there is two things that created NASA, and so NASA actually was funded originally to do, because in the originally like rocket development, like after the World War II, when they brought in a lot of the German scientists into the United States, they were a lot of them focused into defense purposes, and even the Soviets at the time, they were like targeting civil, like we don't know, we just want to do it, I mean, but until like the time of like, later on when NASA was created, it was created for two reasons. One, to have a completely separation from defense industry, so people can, so anything can be like invented, actually can bring technology back. So a lot of technology we see today was invented for space, like solar panels, GPS. I mean, GPS was discovered by two Americans by accident for using Sputnik, the Soviet, even it was a Soviet satellite. But even the space race, I think people talk about it as countries trying to compete to get to space. I mean, at the time of JFK, and Khrushchev, there were actually communication that we need to have collaboration into space instead of we competing into making nuclear bombs and nuclear missiles. Let's limit that and actually target ourselves for something that help all humanity.
Right.
And honestly, that's what made me like love space. And in the beginning, actually, I used to say, I think working on space stuff is a waste of money until I start working in it. I discovered that's like how much it brings back to us. I mean, NASA have multiple programs, one of them called NASA Startup or NASA Spinoff. It allow all these technology are mandatory to actually be passed to private sectors for private Earth use,
And this is not a bad thing, you think, right? I mean, being commercialized is not a bad thing.
No, so I mean, like we need to compare about, okay, the old space and new space. So I mean, in the past, it's like everything probably driven, like project management, the system, the flight, mission control, all of it's developed by NASA, which means NASA is setting the guidelines. NASA is setting the documentation, and different companies still making the components. Like they make, this company make rocket engine, this company make the rocket. But NASA tell you what to do, when to do it, and then a lot of time, the politician agree or disagree on the budget, and things don't happen.
Right.
So today in the new space, like for example SpaceX, or even like there's a lot of other companies even in aerospace, like General Atomics, they took on their side, like to take the initiative to develop drones, because the government did not believe that you cannot convince the politician. They're like F-35 is better, but you cannot convince them. So like in the new industry, like the company like SpaceX or even Blue Origin, like they develop the entire solution and then they sell the service to NASA. In the past, like NASA will go to companies like, you do this part of the engine, you do the rocket, you do the capsule, and so like they incentivizing all these companies. See, like what I'm trying to say is like you incentivize the economy because like let's say now you have a space, the Turkish Space Agency, for example, and I don't want to be interfering, but it's like they create a program. It's like we need to create our own launch system in Turkey. But to do that, we want to incentivizing different aerospace company. So we're going to give them money to develop this rocket engine, which could be used for other things.
Right.
We want to develop them to build a capsule. So you help these companies actually, you build the industry. You see, like most people do not see that. Instead of giving hands out of money, it's like here is some money. Please try to fix the solution to make electric car. I say, you know what? I want you to make an electric car that go into the moon, or like to fly on Mars. You make that very difficult so that if all the technology get advanced, and then this technology, like, NASA could just like give them to everybody else to advance the entire industry.
And hopefully this will be used as something good for the humanity, for the well-being of the whole humanity. Let's hope for that.
Yes. Yeah.
Unfortunately, I have to cut here because the time is up. Loay, thank you very much for coming here, and I wish you can get together with your family as soon as possible.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Evet, Saat Farkı'nda bu hafta Loay Elbasyouni'yi ağırladık. Gazze'den aslında NASA'ya uzanan oldukça ilham verici öyküsünü konuştuk. Bir mühendis kendisi. 2021'de Mars'a gönderilen keşif aracıyla birlikte giden mini helikopterin tasarımcılarından, baş mühendislerinden bir tanesi. Kendisinin hem hikayesini konuştuk hem son dönemde giderek artan uzay yarışını, uzaydaki rekabeti biraz konuşmaya çalıştık. Tekrar görüşünceye dek hoşça kalın.